others can pull you down and push you over the edge. And I don't know this guy tWitch's story, for instance, but I just wonder if he had just even one person that was a stand for him, like really.
Yeah.
Or a Robin Williams, like just one where if he had just, look, we all have to be open to it, right? And we can get so depressed, so oppressed and in a box that we can't see it, we can't hear it if help was there. If you are suffering, and I say most people are suffering, how much of that suffering has to do with living in delusion? You're relating to life, you're reacting to life, a life that maybe doesn't exist. You're living in a reality and a reaction to things that's manufactured in your own head. You're interacting with thoughts in your own head, either thoughts that you're giving meaning to things that are happening, or like people are telling you things are a certain way and you're buying into it. You know, Jesus said people have eyes, but they don't see. Yeah. They have ears, but they don't hear. What does he mean by that? Like that, I never understood that. And then as I was kind of being with that question, it's like, well, yeah, I have eyes, I can see the obvious, but I don't see the different is to see the truth. You know, I have ears, I hear what someone's saying, but I'm not really kind of hearing the truth. Maybe the unsaid, maybe the wool that someone's attempting to pull over my eyes. I'm just buying into it without, naivete, ignorance, or because I have some agenda that I want to buy into believing something because I want it so bad. I want to believe it so bad because that thing is like a carrot dangling at the end of a stick pulling me along like a donkey. You get where I'm saying here? It's like I question how many of you listening are living in these kind of blind spots. Like how much of your life is really not as it seems. You get what where I'm going with this, David?
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking before we started about this unfortunate suicide of DJ Stefan tWitch Boss, the dancer, social media phenomenon. And there was an article that talks about this, and it says every suicide is tragic, but when the victim seems to have been very happy and successful, it is even harder to understand. The best we can try to do is learn something, and perhaps this is a warning about where we are as a society. And here's what it says about him. Boss was loved, both in general and by those close to him, and yet he found no way to resolve whatever was troubling him, whether mental illness or emotional turmoil or some private failure that he could not bear to endure. Now, see, this is the private world.
Yeah, it's very good.
Right? Mm-hmm. This is the private world that we all have, the secret world that you are actually alluding to. I have a secret world inside of me that only I know about. And in that secret world, I carry with me what I call a suitcase full of bricks. Unless, of course, I've emptied that suitcase full of bricks. The bricks are the little things that have happened to me throughout the course of my life that maybe I've never been able to come to terms with or resolve. And the illusion, and this is where the illusion gets really interesting, is that people see me as a certain kind of successful person, happy, well-adjusted, have everything I want in life. And at the same time, there's something more that I don't even understand myself that I want, that I cannot express to anybody, that nobody... I remember one time, and I've told this story before, but I have to say it again. I came out of the water after surfing. I was about 21, 22 years old. And my friends looked at me and they started praising me. They started saying, David, you're the best. There's nobody better than you. And I said, wait a minute. But I knew enough at that moment to say to them, you don't know me. You don't know what I got going on inside of me. I wanted not to have them have an illusion of me because I don't have an illusion of myself. I'm a flawed human being. I know that. And do I want to feel better in my life or do I want to be better? That's the bigger question. I want to be a better person. But if everybody around me is surrounding me, telling me, you don't need to be any better than you are. You're the best. You're the greatest. Well, what can that do to me? That can say to me, I'm really all alone in my little private world where only I know what I'm suffering. Maybe there's something in me that hates the fact that I have wrapped myself in all of this success and that my whole life is so wrapped up in it, but it's actually become a straitjacket. It's actually suffocating me. Like being wrapped up in your own, if you had long hair and it was wrapped around your neck and it was squeezing the life out of you and everybody's telling you what a great hairdo it was. That's what I'm trying to describe.
Yeah, I call that going for the goodies.
Right?
Going for the goodies. If you take credit for even your successes and good works, you really have to watch out because those goodies will get you. Your ego will consume that, and right there, over the years, I've watched so many different types of leaders or even yoga teacher, people who are kind of on a growing trajectory of growth and maybe popularity or growing in their leadership or their ability to teach effectively. And I had to learn this early on. As people are giving you compliments and you see the gratitude shining out of their eyes toward you for helping them in their lives, their health, their well-being, helping them grow in their confidence and helping them wake up in different ways to their life. And you see, if you take credit for that, this is something I had to learn. If I take credit for that, if I take the goodie there, right there, a part of me stops growing right there. But to be able to see that is you have to have a certain level of self-awareness. Yeah. I didn't always have that level of self-awareness, but luckily I had some good mentors and teachers and that I respected that say, hey, you've got to keep kicking the pedestal out from underneath you. Don't get sucked into that world, because if you take credit for the good things, here's the other side of it, then you also are responsible for the bad things. Yes. When things go awry with someone else,
then you blame yourself.
Because it's a self-centric, egocentric world you're living in. But there's a way of being a contribution to people or making a difference to people, being a voice that serves people in their highest sense, so they get to grow and discover their own potential. But you don't take credit for that, and you also don't take credit for when things go awry for them, because it's not on any of us. This whole the tWitch, right? Is that his name? I didn't know of him before.
tWitch.
I didn't really watch the Ellen Show much, but it's interesting to see. Again, back to nothing is as it seems, right? On the public face, that guy had it all together. He had, great life, success, celebrity, there's so many things that so many people in the planet want. He had. Yet, and maybe I don't know the story of his wife and kids and the people closest to him, but often people are going along living in the same house with someone like that who's deeply on the edge of wanting to end their life, and no one around knows it. So
Robin Williams was the same way.
Said, there's a personal reality.
Robin Williams. They found him, hung himself.
Kind of, yeah.
What was going on?
Kind of, you see it, yeah. But you see it all over the place in celebrities, right? They're holding up an avatar of a self, that the public knows, an outer presentation to the world.
Yes.
And they're holding that up, putting scaffolding underneath that, lifting that up, holding that up. I know that feeling. I know that experience. And it's and to be able to dismantle that scaffolding, to take one piece off at a time. That for me is a beautiful opportunity. The silver lining in the pandemic for me was wow, this kind of identity I've been living inside of, even an unwanted identity, one that I wasn't attached to, but out into the world and people, knowing me as, the yoga guy and seeing me through a certain lens that had been created over a lot of years externally. It was they don't know me personally. I really got to see there's something about how people publicly put you in a certain box or in a certain light. And the gap between who I actually am, how I'm actually living, how my boys, my 3 sons would know me, how my closest friends, like you, people, some of my closest friends on the planet actually know me, how I know myself to be, and then who the others put me up to be is like, there's not a lot of correlation there. Is that proper way of saying it?
Yes,
or
yes.
It's not who I am actually is not correlate to this external identity.
Yeah.
Now, if I was someone who was internally deeply suffering and deeply in pain, and isn't say I don't have suffering, I certainly do, but it wasn't enough. The suffering, I saw, oh, here's an opportunity to actually even update who I am in the world publicly. And it's it's St. Paul who said, do not despise the days of small beginnings. It's like, wow, I really get to dismantle an old identity. I get to keep learning in myself, growing in myself, discovering who I am in myself, developing skills from where I am now, and start creating a new kind of sense of self from where I am now. And then, but also then publicly having people relate to me newly. And I think people like this guy tWitch, or you remember that CNN the chef guy who traveled around, I'm blanking on his name right
Anthony
now.
Bourdain.
But yeah, Anthony Bourdain. Remember he committed suicide as well, and people were like shocked. He's got this hugely successful show. He's on TV every week, and he's like doing these amazing documentaries, and looks like it's all on the up and up. And then suddenly the guy commits suicide. You can't see it. But I think sometimes people, it's easy to get on this trajectory and you don't stop, and you don't get connected to your creator, to God, to what's true, the truth, and set that free and be willing to give up an old identity. So that you don't suffer in silence because you're addicted to the admiration that people give you publicly. The admiration becomes a poison.
It is a poison. And this is what I'm talking about, that private world, because admiration is addictive more so than a drug. Rock stars, when they're no longer on the stage, they crave that excitement and that validation that they had when they were standing in front of 100,000 cheering people. But I want to go back to Robin Williams, because, and I think there's a sacred cow here that people are afraid to look into, and that is that they were saying about Robin Williams, his net worth was over $40 million. So he was financially set for life. But and they said that he was one of the happiest people, that his neighbors and the people that knew him, he was a very happy guy, would ride his bike around the neighborhood. But on the inside, there was a torment. And I want to go to the Bible for a reference here. The prophet Elijah, said in Jewish tradition to be the herald of the Messiah, so despairs of his own failings that he asks God to take his life. And he says, enough now, Lord, take my soul, as I am not better than my fathers, he pleads. If you think about that, take a look at our own private little world that we live in. And we are maybe fully aware of our own failings. As a matter of fact, we may have secret failings that we are afraid to have other people find out. Secret, sacred cow failings that we don't want anybody to know. And that can cause us to go into what is described as depression. But the question is, what really is depression? Now, I know that there are many people that would disagree with me when I say that I don't think there's actually much mental illness. I think mental illness can be like a brain problem. Like I have tinnitus. That's a brain problem, okay? There's nothing I can do about it. I can't get rid of it. My mind is always screaming at me. I just deal with it. I listen to it. I deflect it. But that's a problem in my brain. That's not me. That's a piece of my meat that's kind of a little bit defective. I think that depression is the anger that we have about things that we don't have any control over, that turns inward. And so we put on a facade, and the facade that we're talking about with the JFK thing is that the entire world may be exactly like this, that there is a huge facade, and behind it is some form of horrible truth about reality itself, some evil that is so horrible to even consider that nobody wants to even talk about it. And I say that evil is rooted in some form of anger toward reality, which causes us to put on this persona for everybody. Look at me. I'm doing great. You can't find any fault with me. And inside, we inwardly are judging ourselves to death, to the point where one day we say, I can't take this anymore. Something says to us, some voice, something is in there telling us, look, you've had a good life. You've done everything you ever wanted to do.
Yeah, I want to come back to the depression piece that you mentioned, because it really is, the depression, oppression, suppression. It's all stuffed down, unlived life, right? Unlived feelings, emotions, thoughts, unexpressed are suppressed, stuffed down, depressed, and the result is an oppression. So I think when we talk about being oppressed, and that the oppressed mind, and you get the oppressed mind of the masses, as you say, this depressed anger, this depressed, suppressed, stuffed down resentment, it turns into bitterness, it turns into malevolence, it turns into this chemical concoction of toxins, toxicity in the body. It turns into the energy of disease, and literally, physically, chemically, and then the systems start misfiring. But then that suppressed, depressed energy has to go somewhere. Like you said, there's a judgment on self, but it's either going on self or it goes outward. It flows outward, it's projected, vomited outward, and thus you've got cancel culture. This kind of malevolent, bitter, resentful attack, cancel, tear down, because if you can't handle it inwardly, then you're going to project it outwardly, or you don't handle it inwardly and you just end up soft on the couch, watching Netflix, eating bonbons, drinking, smoking, eating, sexing, distracting yourself into just a space, a place where you've completely lost yourself. It's like a not you emerges, a marshmallow kind of you. And you either have that, or you're just, you're online and social media, just attacking venom, just shooting that venom outwardly, creating more oppression, depression as you're creating more of what you are in the world. And that energy is insidious. It spreads like fungus. That negativity, that dark energy, that suppressed energy. But then you get people that are on the line of survival, like this guy tWitch, or like, you just don't know. I have a dear friend who is getting attacked online on social media and stuff, and cancel culture, and this friend is also having a hard time, like with just mentally, just since the pandemic, having a very hard time. And I'm like, wow, I've been talking to this friend, kind of giving support and reason and logic, and like pointing to the standard that I know this person has lived by for a long time and has lost that kind of standard, that creed that we all need, some kind of creed, some kind of higher something that we live to, that we can measure ourselves, something greater than ourselves. And when that's lost, and then suddenly you have this, what I'm pointing to here, you have to watch out the collective oppressed mind as a weapon. It can kill off people who are very fragile, already on the line. You and I, David, have a capacity to take difficulty, opposition, struggle, and somehow use that to get stronger, to get better, to cultivate wisdom, to cultivate knowledge, to live life, and to come out the other side stronger. But I know that's also, you see people, I know there are times in my life where I've never been suicidal or had those ideations or thoughts, but I do recognize the need where, others can pull you down and push you over the edge. And I don't know this guy tWitch's story, for instance, But I just wonder if he had just even one person that was a stand for him, like really,
Yeah.
or a Robin Williams,
Yep.
like just one where if he had just, look, we all have to be open to it, right? And we can get so depressed, so oppressed, and in a box that we can't see it, we can't hear it. If help was there, right? There's that side of it. It takes two to tango, but to be able to throw someone a lifesaver rather than dog piling on, canceling people when you actually don't know what that person's dealing with, you may be responsible for that person's death in a sense. And you may not even know that you going canceling those people had to do with pushing them over the edge. You may not know that, but somewhere life does.
Barron, it's
that karma is a bitch.
Cyberbullying is against the law for that very reason, because there are young people who are very impressionable who will take their own lives because of this kind of bullying. And the idea, though, is that they are not rooted in a strong sense of themselves, as you say, already. And that's very profound what you just said, by the way. And so, coming back to this idea that we have a private world within us, the scripture tells us that confession is good for the soul. But the question is, who are you confessing to? If you have somebody that can actually hear you and help to redirect the energy that you're talking about, this anger and this sense of self-judgment, because really that's kind of the bottom line. That what we don't know is kind of what we know, and that is, let's go back to Robin Williams. We know that he was depressed. Depression is, and some people will disagree with me, but I'm quite sure that it's anger turned within, because there's anger towards things that we have no control over. And at that point, you become the object of this rage, this anger, this disgust, and it turns on you. And when you are the object of it, you cannot survive. It's like throwing yourself into a fire.